Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Barnabas Brushes here on the Elite Encounters channel on Twitch. My name is Patrick. I play the character of Barnabas Quint, scholar, scientist, uh, for our Elite Encounters Soul Severed campaign, which is a live play Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaign that you can watch here on this very same channel Tuesday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern. So I'd like to welcome everybody who's joined tonight, especially the Elite. Those are our subscribers. You too can be a subscriber if you find that button, smash it, and become one of the Elite with us. Last time we painted, good afternoon, Laura. Nice to see you. Last time we were painting some models from the Epic Encounters line, which is a Rupa or miniature line that comes with its own built-in adventure, its own built-in map to use for that adventure. Most of them for role-playing games that are a different fantasy role-playing game than what we play, but easily converted to the Pathfinder system, which is the game system we use at Elite Encounters for all of our live play campaigns. The last time we were painting, we were working on this guy here from the same kit, the Iron Skull Duelist, which is kind of a fancy pants duelist with a nice ascot and cape on. And he seems to be in the process of drawing out his sword. Perhaps it's a rapier, ready to bring some pain. Maybe get vengeance for whoever chopped half his head off, as you can see there. Uh, Half his head is missing on these guys, which I thought was kind of cool. That kind of leapt out at me right away when I opened up the kit. I thought, what was I going to paint first? And definitely this guy with half his head lopped off was instantly my favorite sculpt in the kit. So I jumped on painting that. So that being said, we've done some work mostly with speed paints. Thanks, Laura. I appreciate that. We've started off with a slap chop prime technique. The base models come in the kit in this kind of off-white color here, where you can kind of make out in the sculpt what the details are going to be when you're looking at it. That's why, like I said, that lopped off cranium was one of my favorite features. Let's see if I can get that a little closer. But to paint models effectively, especially with the Army Painter speed paints, you're definitely going to want a prime on there, especially a bright prime. You could paint right to the plastic, but that undertone of that off-white is going to ultimately change what that finished product will look like. So some minis come pre-painted in a light gray or white primer. You can paint right to that with speed paints, that's fine. So what we did, if you watch episode 1, was took one of these models and slap chopped him up and got him ready for speed paint. And then we applied some colors to the bones. You can see some of the details there on the skull really pop out with the paints. And then we did the hands, the pants and boots, and the breastplate, which we opted to go for a metal breastplate on these guys. There's some details left. There's some little epaulets kind of hanging out here. I think I'm going to get those popped first and get them drying because I'm going to want to pick out the metal rivets that are on the ends of those kind of epaulette pieces. So you want to have your lower or your first coat dry, obviously, before you paint. The title should be fixed. Well, hang on. Done. I always forget to hit the final button. So yeah, you should have that already fixed. Sorry about that. But yeah, it is episode 3 of Barnabas Brushes. As you can see there, we have a title, Ascot, What You Can Do. Um, so uh, we'll do the epaulets first. I think I'm going to do a kind of a reddish leather color to kind of have them pop from those shoulders where that breastplate is. So I'm going to use a one of my favorite colors. It's kind of a purplish red, kind of oxblood color called Murder Scene. What a great name for a paint. Army Painter strikes again with their great paint names. And as the name implies, it is like a deep reddish brown, like dried blood. Oh, John Sierra, I'm sure Overwatch will be in it at some point. But hang out and watch us paint, man. Oh, that's right. Yes, Overwatch does have his own special show premiering tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on this very same channel. And I don't even know what he's got in the plans for us, so I'm excited to tune in myself. All right, so we'll use a nice, fresh, new palette here. Just one little drop will do me with these colors. Yes, Overwatch had a lot of screen time yesterday, that's true. Good evening, Bananas. Bananas brushes? Oh, okay. Bumped my camera laughing so hard at being called bananas. All right. So these epaulets are pretty tiny. I'm going to lean into my magnifying lamp here. These kind of leather pieces coming out from under the cloak kind of evoke like Roman centurion armor, with those kind of plates of leather that come out with they usually have a big brass or other metal stud on the end of them. Okay. Those are really tiny. You might not even be able to see them, but they're just coming out from under the breastplate over the shoulders to kind of protect those bony shoulders. Do the same with our second model we have going. Okay, they are, like I said, pretty tiny, but you can just see them. And then I'll clean out my brush. With speed paints, they are acrylic-based paints, so you can just use some nice clean water. I have a little bottle of water here off screen, and then wipe your brush out on a paper towel. Okay, so while that's drying, I've been putting some thought into the color that I want to use for this ascot here. That's kind of over this metal breastplate and the cape. And I think I kind of want to make those the same or very similar colors. Um, but I want to make it stand out from his green pants here. Uh, I just don't want to put a whole lot of different colors because it kind of takes away from the theme of the model to have a rainbow of colors on them, at least in my opinion. But I think for those pieces, I'm going to try a color. Hmm. I want to try something that really stands out. This guy, he is undead, but he was very, obviously very fancy and fashion conscious in life. So I want to try and recreate that a little bit here. Um, he's got these green pants. Oh boy. I'm going to try a bright green color and just see what that looks like on this model first. That's a interesting question. Yeah, hmm. Yeah. Hey, there's Overwatch, speaking of. Concierge, if the question is throwing bits at the channel, I answer yes. Hmm. I don't like that color right off the bat. So I'm going to wet my brush and I'm going to take it off. Which is pretty easy to do with acrylic-based paints, even with speed paint. Just take a wet brush and wipe off, and then use a drier brush to go in and just wipe out any excess paint that's left over. So now I'm back down to that primed cloak. So now that that experiment failed, I think what I'd like to do is maybe a dark, deep rich green on the cloak and ascot. It'll still contrast with the pants, but kind of give it that kind of military kind of theme. We'll see what that looks like. I do have this color here, Gunner Camo from Speed Paint. Let's see what this looks like. All right. So whose name is Bob? This guy here? All right. John Sierra, we'll go ahead and paint Bob's cloak this dark green camo cloak color. I could really load the speed paint on to this slap chop prime on the back here, and you can see as I paint it, that heavy pigment's already going into the darker lower parts of the wrinkles of the cloak, and the lighter pigment staying on top. Still pretty shiny because of the matrix or medium that the paint is in, but as that dries down, that pigment will lay on the surface and give us a nice matte finish. My green screen is going nuts today. Not sure why. Okay, that's sort of the back of the cloak. Pretty well done. It is visible from the front as well. So it comes to these clasps here on his shoulders, but he's got this little piece down here under his legs, between his scabbard and legs, like that. And you can see our slap chop is really dark in those areas, and that makes sense because they're going to be very shaded. And this little piece over the scabbard here, running up the side of his back. I'll make sure not to leave any of the unpainted parts of that cloak. Oh, hey, it's Lenny. How's it going, Lenny? Right. And we'll do his Ascot here. All right, as that dries down, think about that color choice as well. And I want to try a slightly different color maybe for the other guy. So Bob has the green cloak. You want to try something crazy? So for drying, it really depends on the color. Some pigments in the medium, the medium to pigment ratio is slightly different, so it may dry a little bit longer. I think for this guy, I'm going to go a little silly and do something like purple. Yeah, it doesn't take very long for it to fully cure. You want to give it, if you're going to paint over it or spray a fixative. Usually, on all my models, once they're completed, I'll spray a lacquer finish clear coat. Yeah, Lenny, this one's just for you. A little bit of purple. Hey, Pelican, welcome. Thanks for joining. This guy, the cloak, will do a moody mauve, which I don't know. I have not tried that, and I don't know that that's a great idea. They're acrylics and water base, and I don't know if you evaporate them too fast, if how that would affect the finish, if it would cause some crackling or any of that kind of thing. So let's put a little dot of Moody Mauve out. These bottles are about, I want to say, 15 mil bottles, 15 milliliter bottles. So you get quite a lot when you just use one drop at a time. You'll waste them if you fill your palette and then, well, I only needed one brush. Yeah, I would probably do stuff. Yes, you're right. Overwatch. Okay. So, well, we had a name for Bob. Don's here. If you want to, you're welcome to name this one if you want to as well. But let's see what happens when we do this purple. You might get a little bit better contrast. Yeah, this guy looks a little bit more fancy pants than the Mr. Green Cloak Bob. So, And that heavier, darker pigment will go down into the where I've slap chopped that darker prime. And this, man, I got to say again, as I'm doing this, this kind of miniature painting has really kind of revolutionized is a strong word, but it really has kind of revolutionized miniature painting for people who have big batch painting to do, people who have armies to paint, for miniature war games like Warhammer or other things like that. Um, usually the classical style is to prime them, paint them in layers. So you'll do a base coat and then put in your shadows. And then while that's, let that all dry and then go in with your highlights. And sometimes you'll do a second highlight, sometimes even a third. Okay, Bobby Bob. Okay. And yeah, this does kind of give off some Skeletor vibes. I don't know if that's it's good if you like it, right? Okay. So we'll put that guy aside there. And sometimes it is cool to paint models that, are the same sculpt. Let's say you have 4 or 5 skeletons that are the same sculpt, or bugbears or goblins or orcs or whatever it is you have on the board. From a GM perspective, you want something on there to make it so you can keep track of it, right? Because each of those monsters is going to have their own hit points, their own abilities. So painting them with a slightly different color. Some people will put a little number on the base. I like painting them with slightly different colors, especially if they're the same pose. That way, as I'm keeping track in initiative or how many points they have, I just be like, okay, Bob with the green cape has 10 hit points. Bobby Bob with the purple cape has 12, and I can keep track of them separately and visually see them on the table and not lose track of them as they move around during a battle. So painting them slightly different colors to me isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's kind of a habit of mine. Okay, so I think those epaulets we painted earlier have dried down to the point where I can go ahead and hit those with those metal studs that are at the end of those plates. Um, do that. I'll use something that's going to really stand out against that oxblood leather. Um, so I'm going to use this color called glittering loot that'll give me a little bit more contrast. So, when you look at it from a tabletop distance, you're still going to be able to see those buttons pop. Sometimes your bottle tips will get a little bit of dried paint on them. That could potentially clog them. Uh, for unclogging my bottles, uh, you got to be careful because if you tip your bottle over to pour or put a drop into your palette or on your wet palette or whatever you're using to paint, it's just a very little bit of pressure on that bottle to get a little one drop to come out. And if one little tiny squeeze doesn't get it to come out, don't keep squeezing harder or you're going to blast whatever is blocking your tip on your bottle. it's going to blast free, and you're just going to get half your bottle just blast out into your palette, onto your table. Uh, it's a horrible time to stop and have to clean up all that stuff. So if you find that your bottles are getting clogged or not delivering the paint when you give them a tiny little squeeze, uh, yeah, you can clean them out with something as simple as a straight pin from a sewing kit, a paper clip that's been bent out to a straight little pokey tool. I actually have ordered specific pokey tools from a miniature company. This one's from Reaper Miniatures. This is the Reaper Pokey Tool. That's their official name. And this one is just a little pin that comes in its little cork. I've got some paint built up on mine. I should probably clean that off. It's got a little piece of cork that you can keep that point safe and still sharp. Yeah, I agree, Leonard. Yeah. A blocked tip is even worse. Okay, so let's touch these epaulets with just a little bit of this gold color to kind of pick out those rivets or whatever on the epaulets. And you can see here, Overwatch, I'm already kind of manhandling this figure, so that green on this cloak is dry. It's dried down. So for this, I'm just going to touch the tip of the brush to the rivet and let the paint roll off and do the work. I don't have to do anything with the brush but just a little tap. I'm going to hit those clasps as well because they came out a little darker than I liked when they dried. Right. That one I hit a little too heavy. So I'm going to wet my brush while the paint's still wet. I want to get rid of it. So wet brush. That got off most of the paint. And then a dry brush to go in and clean off the excess. And done. So while the paint's still workable, you can do that and clean up any mistakes you might make. Yeah, I definitely, for especially the smaller details, I'll lean forward and use my, I've got a magnifier lamp. So it's basically a ring lamp that has a magnifying lens inside the ring. So I can zoom in on those details and provide light for my workspace at the same time. Other people use visors, but going back and forth, visor, flip up, flip down to, try and talk to you guys watching. I just don't like them. Plus, I wear glasses, so they're not going to go over my head. All right, let's hit that epaulet that I messed up there a second ago. All right, so you can kind of make out off the shoulders those little metal rivets. You can see them right there. Don't touch the model. Okay. I'm going to need a little bit more of that paint. Right, and our purple cloak has also dried down, so you can see it's definitely darker in the shadow parts, and where the higher wrinkles uh, come up as that cloak is kind of blowing in the breeze, it definitely has that lighter color. Just like if your clothes, if you look at your clothes in sunlight or, even artificial light, as they wrinkle, the deep parts of those wrinkles get the darkest color, and the high points of those wrinkles will reflect the light. So, a black t-shirt might look like it's gray or even white on the tops of those wrinkles. A black leather jacket that reflects the light even more, the highlights are going to be even brighter, which is sometimes hard for me to push myself to do when I'm painting like black leather, is to push those highlights to that white, because it's kind of counterintuitive. But if you look at it naturally, that's what it does. These are tiny details, so again, just using the magnifier, just touching the brush tip, let the paint do the work. I'm going to tap those cloak clasps just to get them to pop a little brighter. All right. Yeah, that looks pretty cool. So the models are getting close to done, actually. We've got this kind of undershirt that he's wearing under his breastplate that kind of extends down his arm here and is kind of hanging in ruins over here. Um, that's really it, is the shirts. And then looks like maybe we can even work on the bases a little bit. So that's, again, speed paints. I'm doing two models. It's taken me, from priming to almost end product, maybe 3 hours. Uh, and it's just, you know, done and ready to put on the table uh, in a little bit. Let's see. For the shirts, I think I'm going to use something that looks like maybe a dirty white color. So, that's something that was white in life, but as they were buried in the ground and they've kind of gone to battle a few times, maybe they are, a dirty gray white. So I'm going to use Ashen Stone for this. It's kind of a bluish gray that'll have some whiter highlights. I think that's probably the best course here. Most of my other grays are either too blue or too dark gray. So this will kind of give us a little bit of in between. Yeah, it is fascinating, and it is for me doing it as a hobby. It's relaxing to watch somebody do it, right? It's even more relaxing to be the person doing it. It's kind of a Zen moment for me. And a lot of other hobbyists kind of have the same thing. They kind of get in the zone and they kind of relax after, a rough day of work or a rough day with whatever you got going on. just sit down and paint a couple minis, and it seems like those problems kind of fade in the background as your mind is focused on the details of what you're doing. If I'm not streaming and I'm painting for myself, I like to, throw in some earbuds and put on some nice relaxing music or maybe a podcast. And speaking of, those of you who watch the Elite Encounters actual play of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, those episodes are on podcast now. So if you can't sit down and watch us on a screen, throw those earbuds in while you're mowing the lawn or folding laundry or whatever you're doing, and listen to the show. And, get a little laugh and kind of get, whatever is going on out of your mind for a little bit, and join that imaginative world with us. Okay. Yeah, I suppose when the models are completely done, we can take some photos and throw them up either on, the Elite Encounters webpage, our Instagram. I'll throw them up on my Facebook, throw them on the Elite Encounters Facebook, whatever it is you want to do. Yeah, we'll definitely take some photos. I have a real nice kind of light box to do that with for miniatures, um, and we'll get something like that for you as well. Okay, so Purple Cloak, Bob, right? Was the name, I think. So go ahead and okay. So where that primer is really dark, that color is going to sink in and take on that gray hue. And where it's highlight white prime, it's just going to be a very light gray, just a almost white gray. So this probably was a white shirt when this guy, was alive, that he wore underneath his armor. He might have wore to banquets at his lord's keep as he's impressing the ladies with his fancy ascot and his dashing swordplay. But he's gotten a little dirty as he's battled and been raised from the dead. So he'll kind of have this gray tone to his white undershirt. This is a really good color for like rocks. I mean, hence the name Ash and Stone, right? If you're painting like sci-fi or like some war game stuff that you have like some concrete, it might be a good color for concrete. Oh, interesting. As I'm doing that, I've noticed that I missed a piece of his cloak, so I'm going to fix that. My paint is still workable in the palette, so we'll just go over those missed spots. Cool. Okay, so there's Bob. Let's double check the cloak here on Purple Cloak guy. I think that looks okay. No missed spots that I can see. And again, tabletop distance. This guy definitely pops out to the eye. You can tell he is skeletal. You can tell he's drawing his sword, and he's got this purple cloak on. Really, the only thing left we have to do on these guys, from the looks of it here, we might need to touch up the blade that's coming out of the scabbard here with that metal. But then we can probably start working on the bases. I have a habit of putting my brush in my mouth uh, while I'm working and get both hands free. So this palette here, I want to show you something cool about the speed paints. Um, this is speed paint that I used a couple days ago, and this is what was left in my palette. Obviously, I overshot, right? Overfilled my palette in some of these, But these have totally dried. Some of them have been diluted a little bit with that speed paint medium I told you about last week that Army Painter makes. This is just a bottle of the raw medium that you can put into your speed paints as a thinner or diluent. And that thinner will let the pigment be lighter. Like if you want to make it a thinner uh, layer of pigment to kind of wash over something else, or you just want to tone down the color a little bit, you can use that medium. Once these have dried, you typically can just scrape them right out of your palette. That's why I said last week that sometimes people use pop sockets or poppets, those little fidget toys that were popular last year or a couple years ago. Yeah, that one just popped right out without even doing anything. Okay, and now I've got some cleaner wells. I'll probably, if I want to work with these wells, I'll probably clean them out a little better, but I'm not going to waste your time with that. No one wants to watch that. But I'll use this well. It's pretty clean for touching up my blades that are coming out of the scabbard. You're probably thinking, if it was that easy to scrape the paint off of a palette after it's been dry a couple days, would that happen to my models? And the answer is, yeah, not as bad. Obviously, this plastic is very smooth and has not a lot of texture to it, so the paint doesn't really stick to it very well. Whereas a prime has that plastic has been covered in primer that has a texture to it that holds that pigment to the model. However, you can go with a fingernail or a sharp metal object or something and knock that paint off. So that's why, like I said, it's a good idea before you start playing and putting your models on the table or on the map for your big battle for your game with your armies, your Space Marines, your Tyranids, whatever you're playing. The You're going to want to give them a protective coat, and I use a just a Krylon clear coat. Tester's dull coat is really good if you can find it anymore. But you want to protect your models. You put a lot of work on them, painting them, so you want them to last a long time. I've got some miniatures that I painted, boy, man, back in 2013, 2014, so 10 years, and the paint still looks good on them because I took that time to do that final step. Oh man, what is the favorite figure that I've ever painted? Oh, boy, that's tough. I've had some miniatures come out that I've used for some characters in some other Pathfinder games. I had I did a little bit of a kit bash and created a tiefling magus. So he had one hand was kind of doing some somatic components to cast a spell, and in his other hand, he was originally holding a staff. I cut that staff out and attached a hand holding a scimitar because my magus used a scimitar, and then I painted that scimitar to have like a lightning effect coruscating around the blade. And I'd spent a lot of time on that model, and that's probably one of my favorites that I've done that was a lot of work and I used personally. Um, Speed paint model, I think my favorite one that's come out so far. I did a very large dragon model for a Pathfinder campaign I play at home, and that model was slap chop primed and 100% speed paint. I think the only thing I didn't use speed paint on, so maybe not 100%, was the teeth. Um, because the teeth I like to kind of do several colors to kind of get the root of the tooth versus the crown of the tooth looking different colors. That dragon, I think, when that hit the table, all my players saw it and they're like, that is scary and really cool at the same time. So that's probably my favorite recent model. Maybe next week, if you tune in, I'll show you that dragon. He's going to take up the whole screen, though. He is a beast. Okay. So we were going to touch up those blades real quick. So I used that broadsword silver color on the blade originally, or on the scabbard tip originally. So I'm going to keep that same metal theme using that same color. And I just need a tiny little bit because there's not a whole lot of the exposed piece I need to worry about. Yeah, indeed. And since that's the same color as the breastplate, I can kind of touch up some areas on the breastplate. And that does remind me that there are some rivets and raised areas on the breastplate that I want to play with. So I have some of that workable gold left, so I'll use that. We're going to make this guy look really cool. He's got that little rivet there. Just hit that. And I'm just going to run this along this edge here. Of those plates where he has these kind of ridges. Okay. So that kind of made his armor just a little bit more fancy pants. Huh, what got me into painting miniatures? Um, the first mini I painted was way back in the late 90s, playing an AD&D campaign with some friends back home in Colorado. And we had some old metal minis laying around, and we got out some really, crappy paints and slapped that on there and did like some very basic dry brushing to pop out like chainmail pieces. Uh, was not great. My very first model was definitely not great. And then I kind of uh, stopped doing that for a bit. I moved out here to Indiana and started playing third edition D&D, and I needed a figure, so I went and bought one of those D&D miniatures that come already painted, and they had a miniatures game with third edition, and they had all kinds of collections of miniatures. And I found one that kind of represented my character. A lot of game stores sold singles of those miniatures. And I found one that was the right sculpt, would fit my character, but didn't have the right color hair, didn't have the right color clothes. So I was like, well, I'll paint over it and see how that comes out. So I got some acrylic paint set and just went to town with plain old acrylics. Looked at a couple things online to get some tips and tricks, and I still have that model in a shoebox somewhere. And it's not my best for sure, but it was my first, at least in my brain and in my heart. And then Reaper Miniatures did a Kickstarter for their Bones line, which is a complete plastic recasting of a lot of their classic metal miniatures to make them cheaper, to make it so you can get lots of miniatures on the table for, fraction of the cost of what it would be with the standard metal miniatures that they produced. So I kickstarted that, got one of every model that they were going to put out for that first wave of plastic models. And when I got those, I started watching, videos, started watching other people paint. I started reading articles and tips and tricks, and started painting with some werewolves that I got for a Pathfinder campaign. Uh, and I was hooked, and I've been doing it ever since. That was a lot. But because I'm, really enjoy the hobby, I kick-started every single wave uh, of those Reaper miniatures, and I now have boxes and boxes and boxes of unpainted figures, which is really like, it's dawned on me at the rate I was painting, I would never ever finish them. And some poor soul would inherit uh, dozens, if not hundreds, of unpainted models from me. Um, but when speed paint came along, and I've learned to really increase my throughput with these new tools, I might catch up by the time I get this next shipment that's due to arrive sometime this year. Probably not. But a lot of us painters call our collection of unpainted figures our shelf of shame. And I don't have a shelf of shame. I have closets full of shame. But I'm catching up. And, I tend to want to do things right. So I'm hesitant to jump into it unless I know what I'm going to do to make it look good. Um, Sometimes I've had models come out that I thought were terrible, and I've thrown them away and got new copies of that miniature and painted them again. I'll never catch up. Okay, so I think that our little skeleton buddies are coming along. The actual figure themselves is pretty much done at this point. Picked up pretty much all the details. Their skulls are definitely well defined, especially this guy. The green cloak, I think, looks the better skull. So now we're ready to work on the bases. We've got just a few minutes left, so maybe I'll put down um, some stone for the bases. For these larger kind of flat chunks that are coming out of the base, whoops, that looks like hunks of stone or what may have been a building that collapsed or something. And then the stuff that's over it, I don't know, it could be dirt. It might be, there's not really anything defined as like plant matter on there to me. So that's probably just dirt. How am I going to make that look interesting? Dirt and stone. Oh no. What is it that me and Lenny have in common? Oh, that's funny. Shameful. Okay, so I think for that stone, a lot of times I like to use a color called Gravelord Gray. This one is well used. You see that that label is starting to get wrinkly from all the times I've used this bottle. Uh, yeah, let's do that. Let's do, I also have this darker kind of bluish gray called a cultist cloak. Uh, and that one kind of gives it a little bit more, yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I'd hazard that wager. Okay, let's do Grave Lord Gray for the stone on these guys. When this dries, this will be dark gray in the like crevices and cracks, and a very light gray on the top. So it'll kind of give it that feel of like stone, like a stone building. The masonry's just been collapsed. Okay, let that start drying. And we have just a couple minutes left as I'm painting this ruined stonework here. So I just want to call out and make sure that you tune in tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock here at the same channel for whatever surprise Overwatch has in store for us. I'm excited to see what that is. I have a feeling if you're into technology, it's going to be right up your alley. And then don't forget to tune in every Tuesday evening on Twitch for our live play of our Pathfinder 2nd Edition campaigns. Soul Severed every Tuesday. That's the one I'm in. And then we also have Psychic Promise every first Tuesday of the month. And that is also set in that unique world of Iota Dree, but in a different timeline. Or a different time frame, I should say. Same timeline, different time frame. If you can't catch us on Twitch, we have videos on demand. We'll drop on Fridays on YouTube, so check out our YouTube channel. Links are here right on the Twitch channel you're watching right now. If you can't, watch on the screen, be sure to catch us on podcast anywhere you can listen, or almost anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Still a couple holdouts. And who knows, you might see these models that we're painting here on Barnabas brushes hit the table in one of those Elite Encounters campaigns and square off against some of our player characters. So thanks for joining, guys. If you like what you see, don't forget to follow us here. You can hit a sub. Uh, Obviously, all of this equipment and things that we're doing to bring this show to you, it does cost us money. So if you like what you see and want to support what we're doing, we do have Patreon subscriptions available where you can help support us and help us continue to bring these high quality shows to you, both for our live play and for our behind the scenes shows that we're doing every week. So we'd love to see you support us. We'd love to see you come every week. Until then, we'll catch you next time here on Elite Encounters. Have a good evening. Good night, everyone.